Right, so Oulton Park debrief. So Oulton Park came with its own challenges and obstacles that we got through, most of them throughout the day. Some of them are a bit more terminal than others, but we'll go through the things that broke and the things that need improving for Donington. So the big oopsie was the inlet manifold. The inlet manifold blew wide open. Now, we're not sure why. We're not sure if maybe there was a hiccup through the intake manifold, and that's what caused it to split wide open. Now, luckily, we had the Artec mobile fabrication station to hand, so we were able to fix it. And double lucky, because it was on the top side here, we managed to repair it in situ without having to remove the manifold completely. I made this inlet manifold the Saturday before we were meant to go on a holiday on a Sunday, but I had to get the car ready to go to Artec while I was away on a holiday, so that Saturday was spent rushing putting that manifold together. So it might have just been the fact that I was rushing putting it together. It broke, I'm owning up to it, I made it, I'm going to fix it. So what we're going to do for Donny is we're going to remove the manifold and we're going to put some diamond fish plates on there to sort of like strengthen the join where all these pieces are joined together. Another reason why it could have blew wide open is that for some strange reason we ended up at 19 psi in boost. That's one factor that may be a cause of the failure. We dialed the boost down for the rest of the day just to avoid doing that, but we actually set our PB with less power in it. But one thing that was apparent was the terminal speed with it at 19 psi is about 4 or 5 mile an hour quicker down at 12 psi. So I'm really keen to get back up to 19 psi because I think that's where the car is going to be most competitive. And the engine is still intact at 19 psi, which is pretty sick. So yeah, that's it in that manifold. We've got out of the way. Clutch. We had clutch issues at Brands Hatch, if you remember. We kind of had clutch issues in and out of the workshop and was moving it about. So what I've ended up doing is, hopefully you can see down here, is I've actually packed the clutch arm here with a load of washers, and what that's allowed me to do, it's allowed me to pull this bracket here beyond the threaded section of the clutch cable. So it's allowed me to put about another ½ inch worth of adjustment on there, and that seems to have so far fixed the clutch issue. So whether we're still going to convert the gearbox back to hydraulic or not, I'm not too sure, but until it breaks again, I'm going to persevere. We've got 2 spare clutch cables in the van now, so if you do end up breaking one or stretching one again, we've got spares. But the clutch still feels really good after Oulton Park, so I'm not going to change it for now. The bodywork held up really well. Unfortunately, we've had a bit of a disaster with the bumper here. Now, all this top part of the bumper was all filler and a tiny bit of fiberglass, so there was no strength in there. But I've got some quick release catches that I'm probably going to put in this bumper here, so the bumper can come on and off quickly. The bonnet's still intact. We're happy with that. Didn't fly off at speed. The rear arches, we are touching it here slightly, but I can see here that I've not trimmed it enough. So that's one thing that we'll possibly need to sort for Donny, or just let it self-clear. Now this side is perfectly fine. Actually, while we're at the back here, so my spoiler finally broke after all these years. We've had it on the car now for a year and a half, plenty of curb action, and it's split just there. We managed to do a field repair to get it back on. Now I know what the cause is, just a weak spot here in between this hole and the outer edge, but now I know we don't need them holes. I'll just get them re-laser cut without those 2 extra holes, and we should be golden on that. And I could probably just make these parts here a tiny bit thicker just to compensate, just put a bit of extra strength in there. So another issue we had was that on right hand corners, the car had a real horrible violent shake to it. It didn't unsettle the car. Now I assumed the vibration was on the rear because I couldn't feel it through the steering. So we swapped tyres left to right, didn't fix it. We swapped wheel bearings left to right, didn't fix it, and we couldn't figure out what it was. So we took the front tyres off to bleed the brakes again, and that's when I found this. And then that there is a telltale sign of where the tyre has been hitting. Now, we managed to get the wheel off quick enough to see that this was still hot and molten rubber after we'd come in. This is the cause of our violent vibration and shaking on right hand corners. Bit of a kick in the teeth, especially after all the work that we did tubbing the rears. If you remember watching that video a couple of videos ago, if you've not seen it, why not? Go watch it, it's sick content. But then I was like, well, how come we're getting this vibration on right-handers but not left-handers? Just sort of see there, I hope, about where the torch is, you can just see where the tyre has rubbed ever so slightly. But after some measuring, the actual internal structure of the inner arch is different on the driver's side as it is to the passenger side. I'm not sure how well this will translate on video, but the driver's side one doesn't have this sort of like little hump here. It's sort of like it cuts straight across the top there. So at least we know now what it is and we can fix it now. Dad was quite prepared to get the BFH out. That's a big fucking hammer to anyone who doesn't know, and just sort of make some clearance after a couple of hammer taps. But I was adamant I didn't want to do that because I still want the engine bay to look a bit more presentable. So I didn't want to do that. So now we knew what it was and what damage it was and wasn't doing, we persevered. The tyre seems to be okay. You can sort of see here where it's been rubbing against it, but yeah, no lasting damage with that one. The drive shaft didn't pop out this time, so we're not too bothered about that. Now, the auxiliary belt shitting itself was more my fault, really. Human error for not tightening it up properly, so we're not going to bother dealing with that. And I think that actually leads me on to our final issue of the weekend, and that is the brakes. Now, you'll remember I had the brakes on the board for Brands Hatch debrief video, but we didn't actually get around to fitting them. So, long story short is I've actually bought a set of 4-pot Willwoods. They're over there. That's going to be a separate video, so I'm not going to show you too much detail into it. Another issue that we didn't fix for Oulton was the steering. Now, we were promised a manual rack, which didn't come on time. You know who you are. But yeah, it didn't come on time, but thank fuck.
What's your profanity?
It's actually landed today, only about 8 weeks too late, but it's here now. I was going to put the power steering back on, messing with Dave's car the other day, pushing it around. The steering's really light on a manual rack, so we're going to try a manual rack first. See how that improves the steering input, because it is still really heavy with that looped power steering rack. It's not so bad when you get going, but at low speed corners, absolute nightmare. So I'm hoping that rack is going to make the car a bit nicer to drive. If it doesn't, we'll go put power steering on it. But you know, we've got to try these things to know what we're doing. In theory, it'll weigh a bit less as well to bring the curb weight of the car down, since we're obsessed with making the car as light as possible. But yeah, that's it. Short and sweet debrief video. I hope people enjoy watching these rather than having it sort of like tied into the arse end of a vlog, because they're already 30+ minutes long anyway and no one watches them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video next week when we get the bigger brakes on.